All right, and we're live. Hooray! Finally. So that was just a live demonstration of the types of problems that you can have when you're trying to work online. And I'm sure it's not the first one that you've experienced this week. Welcome to this live Ask Me Anything from Cambridge University Press. We're going to be with you for the next 45 minutes or so, answering all your questions about online teaching. Hopefully providing you with some good tips as well. My name is Matt Ellman, and I'm joined by an elite team of experts this evening, which I'm going to ask to introduce themselves in alphabetical order. So we'll begin with you, Chris. Welcome.
Thank you, Matt. So hello, everyone. My name is Chris Thorn. I'm a teacher trainer, online teacher trainer and materials writer. I'm currently speaking to you from my current base, just outside of Cambridge in the UK. I've been involved in English language teaching for more years than I'd like to remember, in Asia, North Africa, Australia and Europe. And I'm very much looking forward to answering some of your questions today.
Okay, I'm Helen Allen. I work for Cambridge Assessment English in the new product development department. So that means that I work on digital learning, teaching and training products. And I also help teachers to use technology with their learners so that they get the most out of it. My background, I sort of was working in teaching, teacher training before I joined Cambridge Assessment, and again, sort of across Europe and in the UK as well.
Hi, I'm Olha Madylus, and I'm speaking to you from London. I have about 40 years of experience of teaching, training, materials writing, book writing, mostly with young learners and teens, and I have very limited tech knowledge and background, so I'm going to try and fill in a few of those gaps. But it is something that I have learned a lot about recently, like many of you, and have been trying to help teachers online with that.
Great, thanks all of you. So I think a good place to start is the sensation we've just experienced of trying to get online and encountering problems, and the feeling of stress and frustration that can cause. So maybe we could start just by hearing your experiences of what teachers have been going through recently with the current situation. A lot of them are working from home. A lot of them have limited experience teaching online. And what kind of problems is that throwing up? Helen, could you kick us off?
Yeah, so we've just done a couple of runs of a webinar, in fact, about getting started with teaching English online. And we've had almost 10,000 people
Wow.
in those webinars, across a number of webinars. And it's really interesting because that's the first question we ask in the webinar is how do you feel about teaching English online? And there's two distinct camps, I think, really. Most people, the majority of the people, have been reporting that they feel nervous, anxious, and just generally overwhelmed, like the rug has been pulled from underneath them. So they've moved from a classroom where they feel confident and in control, and then suddenly they're in an environment that they can't use. It's not that they can't use it very well, but they're not necessarily very fluent to start with in using that platform. And it feels really hard. It feels like everything's really slow, and it feels like they have to spend a lot of time preparing as well.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you've got people who are like, let me at it. This is really exciting. I want to learn. I want to learn how to do new things. This is great. Everyone can see things online. And then, of course, you've got students who can't actually access those classrooms as well. So it's a complicated situation.
Yeah, that definitely kind of resonates with what I've heard as well. Especially the time that it takes to plan. Chris, how about you? What kinds of things have you heard?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, I think a lot of the teachers I've been in touch with have just a huge commitment to their students, and they're trying so hard, and so they have such expectations, or placing such expectations upon themselves. And it's my feeling that they're probably putting more pressure upon themselves than their students have expectations of them. I think students are generally quite understanding. They know this is something that's new to most of us. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, very much so.
How about you, Olha?
Well, I'm like the others. I've been hearing lots of teachers saying to me, I don't know where to begin. And I think some of them feel like they've been thrown to the lions, in that their bosses have just said, well, you've just got to do it online now, with no support at all. So that's really scary. And I think there can be a sense of kind of desperation there. But one of the lovely things is that some teachers have been sharing with me some of the things that they've discovered. And that although it's difficult, although they may not even want to go down the online teaching way, that they have found that there can be some benefits, there can be some enlightenment there, where they do discover some things that they never expected to discover. So, like all journeys, they can be tough, but we can make lots of discoveries too.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost like it's an opportunity to reimagine how to teach. It's like a digital lens that you can look through and reevaluate what you do and why, and what you want to do and what you want to achieve. But it's hard to do that when you suddenly just got to do it
in a crisis situation. Yeah,
yeah, very
much so.
Yeah, I think. So I think it'll be very interesting to see if, I mean, this isn't a situation I think anyone would have chosen, but I wonder if, sort of when we get through this, if all teachers will go back to teaching the way they did before, or sort of how many extra little tools that they'll get from this learning curve that will stick with them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Why don't we start by thinking about maybe the background, things that teachers can change when they're trying to set up initially, when they're making this transition. What are the kind of conditions that are needed? Helen, I'm looking at you here, to try and get teachers off on the right foot.
Okay, so I mean, like, obviously the big thing is you need a platform to use.
We've had a lot of questions actually about platforms.
And so your choice of platform should really be determined by what you want to use it for. So, are you teaching in a school? Is it really your school who should be determining which platform they would like you to use? Are they subscribed to something like Microsoft Teams or Google Education, something where actually there's a lot more control and a lot more privacy, especially if you're teaching younger learners or teenagers in a school environment? Or is it that you can, choose any platform you like and you just got freedom to select something that works for you? And I think probably the best place to start when you're thinking about a platform is, again, like I just said, is just what do I want to use it for? Is it a large group that I've got? Do I want them to be able to work in small groups? So do I need breakout rooms? There's little kind of tiny groups that you can put people into within a larger online classroom. Do I want to share what's on my screen? Do I actually want to share the screen? Or do I want to use a whiteboard? And if you're thinking about a whiteboard, so some tools have great whiteboards where you can paste things on and you can all type at the same time and you can draw little squares and each group can write in a different place on the whiteboard. But some whiteboards are just, it's just a pen and you can only draw, and that's a bit difficult. It takes quite a long time. Or are you going to share a third-party whiteboard? So like thinking about actually what it is that you want to do. Do you want to do pair work? Do you want people to see what's on your computer? Or do you just want to share materials that they do and then you all get together and talk about it? And that helps you determine what features you need and therefore the kind of platform that you want to choose.
That's great. Thank you, Helen. Chris, any tips for teachers making the transition?
Yeah, well, I think those are all really, really important points. I guess another thing that teachers could consider is, are they just looking to support their learners during sort of synchronous or real-time sessions? If you're watching this live now, this would be a synchronous session. Or are you also looking to support people asynchronously. So do you need a platform, or do you need a place where you might be able to sort of share learning content that learners can come and maybe contribute to discussion forums? There's lots of different options for that as well. So just taking a step back and really trying to consider what it is that you and your learners need when you'll be working together, if you'll be accessing it at the same time or not, could also be a useful thing.
That's an important point, isn't it? Because I think there are many examples of general teaching skills that teachers can really benefit from bringing from the classroom into the online environment. And sometimes it's not always obvious that that's the case, that teachers have all these skills that are still useful when they're teaching online. Olha, have you got any tips for teachers trying to make the transition to online in terms of the mindset that's going to serve them best?
I just think don't put too much pressure on yourself. This is such a weird situation. It's such a horrible situation that we're all living through. And I think that most teachers are perfectionists. But there's no such thing as a perfect lesson. There's no such thing as a perfect situation. But don't put yourself into this situation where you feel that you have to do so much and you're doing online courses at 3 o'clock in the morning and trying to do things. You know, a little bit can go a long way. And one thing I was thinking about listening to both Chris and Helen, and I've thought about quite a bit recently, is you don't have to replace the whole lesson online. You know, students, particularly when they're older, teenagers, adults, can be asked to do quite a few things on their own. Most people are at home anyway, they've got the time to do that. And you can't just, you know, you can't think, oh, I teach 40 hours a week, I've got to do that all online. I think you can think about, you know, where is the value of doing it online, and what, you know, this is not going to last forever. You know, this is an interim thing. Can I get them to do certain things on their own, and then we can do different ways of checking it? They don't have to even check it online. They can check it, you know, you can send them the answers, you can post the answers. So I think it's, you know, be kind to yourself and trust your students to be part of the solution. I think that's a very important thing.
I think that's definitely right. And be kind to yourself is like a key message, and good enough is good enough. I mean, those are the two things, you know, be kind and try things that are small. But I think the point you're making there, Olya, is like that it is really good to encourage independent learning anyway. You know, it's one of the things that teachers try to do, is to create great learners, not just people who can do the stuff that's been taught, but who can learn for themselves. So all of that is fantastic. Getting people to do activities outside the classroom, and then thinking, well, you know, like, where does the tech add value and where does the teacher add value? And where the teacher add value, that's what you do in your online lesson. And you can do it different ways as well. You don't have to have your entire classroom of 40 students in your online classroom for an hour. You could split them into 3 groups and do 20 minutes each. So they could do independent learning for the other 40 minutes. And then you could spend time with a specific group, which is great for differentiation. Split them up, you know, you don't have to have them all there. You don't have to manage them all at the same time. It depends if you're in a school or not. It depends what requirements you have in terms of contact hours. But, you know, there's different ways of doing things.
Absolutely. I just wanted to say one thing about that, and that's the possibility of creating little opportunities for one-to-one mentoring, coaching. So if you know, the students don't have to be doing the same stuff. You know, if they're preparing for an exam, somebody's not very good at listening, they could be doing loads of listening, whatever, you know, or if they're younger, they might be doing projects on different things. But I think there is an incredible opportunity for this mentoring aspect, which we don't have time for in the classroom with everybody, is those set up little meetings. So you can meet just for 5 to 10 minutes, not even every week, but just say, how are you getting along? And also that personal thing be really good for everybody's mental health, to think that the teacher cares about me. The teacher isn't just talking to a screen. So there are opportunities for doing that. And that way you can keep in touch with everybody and you can kind of follow their progress. And you can, rather than replace what's happening in the classroom, you do it differently.
That's a great idea. Thanks. Right, I'm going to just remind everybody that this is an Ask Me Anything session for Cambridge University Press. I'm joined by Chris Thorn, Helen Allen, and Olha Madylus, and we're answering your questions on teaching online. So if you've got questions, please do put them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to get to them. I'm going to move now to some of the questions that we've had about using a course book. So quite a few questions here from teachers who are still required to use their course books, and they want to know how they can use them online. So for example, Maria asks, how can I adapt my course book to online teaching? Alessandro says, I've been teaching English face-to-face for a few years using Interchange, which comes with lots of features like quizzes, tests, presentation software, and so on. How can I adapt it to online teaching? Chris, any ideas about where teachers can start? They've got a course book, they've got their students there online. How can they bring these two together?
Oh, well, look, I guess it's many of the same decisions that you make in the face-to-face classroom would still apply. You have some content. I'm presuming that the learners also have their course book as well.
Yeah, I think that seems to be the case. Yeah.
That's quite an important thing, isn't it? Just thinking of copyright and everything. But yeah, in the same way, you have your course book. I think rather than just going from sort of page 1, 2, 3, you'd look at your learners. You'd try and find out about them, what's important to them in their own lives, what their learning goals are, and try and relate what's in the book to them. You might give some bits more prominence than others, depending on that. In some cases, you might be working with texts that are provided in the book. Now, I think a huge affordance of working online is that presumably everybody has access to the internet. And so you might have loads more opportunities for sort of sending people off on little missions to find alternative little texts and things that might be a little bit more interesting to them than, the, sort of general thing that's been, sort of put together in that book. So I think, I don't know, coming from a classroom perspective, we probably sort of immediately sort of see change and limitations being put upon our teaching, because there's maybe some things we can't do, but I think there's lots of things that we can do as well. But I think, sorry, I'm rambling a bit here, Matt, but I think in terms of the way that you sort of set up tasks, sort of lead into a topic, getting people thinking about that and how it relates to their own lives, giving space for learner voice and getting them to make those connections, that still applies. That's still as important as ever.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, sorry, Helen, just to say how important it is to recognize the teaching skills that still apply in this online context, so that we don't feel like we have to learn everything from scratch. As Chris has said, there's so much there that is still relevant and still important to do. You were saying, Helen?
I was just going to agree with Chris. It's about sequencing and choosing the activities that are relevant for your learners. And maybe I can add a little bit there about, the different types of activities in your course book and relate that back to what Olha was saying as well, that you don't have to do everything in the online classroom. So you're reading text, okay, like get them to do those reading activities in independent learning time. But then all those other little bits, the introduction to the text, the, sort of working around the topic, all those bits where you have discussion, you're activating schemata, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's great. Do that at the end of one lesson, then get them to go away, do their independent learning, do the reading text, and then you come back and then you're ready. You can check answers, you can solve any problems, you can do some feedback, and then you can go for those sort of more productive activities at the end in response to the text, or some language work, or some practice in breakout rooms, that kind of thing. So it's about, it's exactly the same as what you do normally. It's just kind of like a little bit of a kind of moment when you're thinking, oh, how do I do that? I was like, well, I'm going to stick them in breakout rooms for that bit, and I'm going to get them to do that bit at home. And that's really nice. We can talk about that as a class, because that's a really nice topic, and it'll help us all, talk to each other and develop a bit of rapport and have some communication. that kind of thing, you know. It's just it's selecting your sequence, what's relevant. I totally agree, Chris. It's like what's relevant to your learners and what do they need to do to achieve their goals as well.
So it sounds a bit, Helen, as if you're talking about teachers maybe rethinking traditional lesson boundaries, because in a bricks and mortar classroom, your lesson boundary is very fixed, isn't it? The students come to class, that's when you do your lesson, and then they disappear. But maybe thinking about the beginning of one lesson and the end of the next one, you're sounds like you're suggesting that could be kind of movable, a bit flexible.
I think so. I mean, really, that's what you want learners to do. You want them to go home and carry on learning. You know, it's just an extra stimulus. Like, yeah, give them some responsibility, give them some independence. You know, get them doing the things.
Classroom, isn't it? It's saying you come to your lesson prepared with lots of things, not that you come kind of waiting to do stuff. And I think it will be something that teachers think about in the future, is actually, is there value in doing something like silent reading in the classroom? So that's good for the future. What I do want to just add is that both Cambridge Assessment and Cambridge University Press are putting a lot of lesson plans online to support teachers with ideas of how to plan their lessons for online lessons. So I know that Matt has got the links and he's going to share the links with everybody later. And this is great. And it doesn't matter actually if you're not using those course books at all. You just go and have a look at the suggestion of what a lesson plan would look like. And they're very simple. There's no fireworks, there's nothing crazy about them, but just very simply what you might do, exactly as Helen says, not when you're actually online. Get them to do more, trust them to do more. If they don't do it, they don't do it. But, you know, I think we have to just be very grown up at this time and just say, look, it's going to be of value to you. And I think they'll quickly realize that, you know, they've got to be part of that process. They're not passive learners in this case. They're actually going to be more active, which seems a bit crazy when you're online, but I think that's what they need to do.
Yeah, and just like a really small point there, just like kind of relating that to younger learners as well. Those things that they do don't have to be on screen. You know, I mean, young learners, you don't want to have them on screen all the time anyway. So you can set them little activities that they do. They have to go and learn a song, for example, or make up a song or whatever it is. And they can write it on a piece of paper. They can draw a picture. They can make a puppet and do a dialogue with their puppet, you know, and then they can come back online and they've got their puppet. Oh, this is quite exciting, because then there's the other kids and they're all watching, you know, and then they do their dialogue with a puppet. So it's like, you know, trying to make the most of the opportunity, trying to make the most of the environment that they're in as well. I mean, these kids are in their houses. They've got everything there. They've got an orange. They've got an apple. You know, they can bring it. It's like, go and find me an apple. I mean, like, there's some health and safety considerations, yeah, but like, but you know, you can really take advantage of the context that they're in instead of being in this box in a school.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and actually on that point, Olha mentioned the supporting resources that we've got for this. Both Cambridge University Press and Cambridge Assessment. We have our Supporting Every Teacher campaign, and there are exactly these kinds of resources. So there is a blog post about teaching prepositions of place, I think, using what's in the home. And you can find resources like that. Yep.
That's fantastic.
As if you've read it, Helen. You can find all of those resources at cambridge.org/wobble/WOBL.
I mean, there's loads of clear, like, content and language integrated learning things as well. Let's do PE in English. Let's start PE in English. Let's just do it, you know? Wow. Interesting.
Absolutely. I think that time away from the screen, though, is so important, isn't it? Not just for young learners, but for all of us.
Yes.
You know, certainly I've found that I'm spending a huge amount of time looking at a screen in recent weeks, and it's important just to get up and get away from it.
I mean, I guess just thinking of our learners, I mean, we might automatically just think of them in the context of the time that they're with us, they're teachers, but they have lots of other classes as well.
Yeah.
A lot of classes, and yeah, they might be spending their free time in front of a screen as well. So really, yeah, really important to think about. It's not like they've just sat down in front of a screen at the beginning of our lesson. They could have been there for some time already.
Yeah, it's
I think
important to remember that.
that's why Helen's ideas, I mean, you're talking about the little ones, and that's something I would be doing, get them to draw the pictures, make puppets and stuff. But we have to think about the teens and the adults as well. What can we get them to do that is not just going to be screen time? Because that that way is not very healthy for everybody to spend too much time. So look, giving them little project work to do, something a little bit more creative to do. Let it be fun, and get the teens and the adults to draw pictures, get them to do something else, because I think this is really important for us to, explore all these things. And I think the fun element is really important, because that's why I don't believe that all teaching will end up online, because all that silliness that happens naturally in class should not be lost online. And there's lots of ways of doing it when you sort of eliciting, I don't know, target sentences, example sentences in a particular bit of grammar. Don't expect them to be serious. Give a prize for the silliest one, the craziest one, the most imaginative one, and kind of push. Let's not get restricted by the screen. Let's let this kind of open things up a bit more.
I'm just having lots of ideas here. I'm imagining my adult class. They all go away and they bake something, like, this is Bake Off Extreme. They go and bake something and they bring it back and they hold it up. And then they get questions, they present it, they present what they did, the other people can ask them about it. They can ask them what it tastes like. I mean, that's great, isn't it? It's more sensory as well. Yeah.
That's a lovely idea. I like that.
My mouth is watering.
That's the only problem, we can't taste them, but hey.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Right.
I'm just going to add something to that, because I just thought of that. The teacher could do their own baking, but I think the teacher could also, whatever age group you teach, is also bring yourself to that lesson and not feel that you're just the cipher for what the students are doing. And I'm just thinking, I was planning some lessons for the young learners, is if you have a pet or whatever, introduce your pet to the students. They don't normally meet your cat. If you have, your granny lives with you, let granny say hello. Of kind of make yourself even more real, because they're going to be missing you. Even the teenagers, they will be missing you. So I think it's really important to kind of be ourselves, and not try. This is, again, don't worry about it. Tell them that you've had a bad day. Tell them your biscuits were burnt when you tried Bake Off. I think that's really nice.
Absolutely. Right. We mentioned some of the supporting resources from Cambridge University Press. Helen, I know that there's a lot that Cambridge Assessment has produced. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of those things?
Yeah, so I mean, you'll send links afterwards, won't you? But the Supporting Every Teacher page on the Cambridge Assessment English website has got links to everything. So that's the best place to go, because then you can find all the other bits and pieces. So we have a series of webinars about teaching online. So the first one I mentioned earlier was about getting started with teaching online. And there's a video recording of that available if you want to check in. But then we've got a whole series coming. So they're about resilience and teaching in tough times, preparing for Cambridge English qualifications online. So all kinds of different things about skills and how you can prepare people for the different skills exams in an online classroom as well. So lots of different things like that. Other things like managing interaction and feedback in an online classroom. So it's kind of like webinar type content. And I know that there's some with the press as well, with Cambridge University Press, Matt. I know that there's some other stuff around that. We've also got a MOOC, so an open online course, which you can join. We've actually just finished one run of that course, and we had over 55,000 people in it, which is really interesting, because the course itself is a social learning platform. So we have our experts there, we have our educators who help you learn, we have content, we have videos, that kind of stuff. But a lot of the learning takes place in the discussion on each of the steps of the course, and it's lovely. It's so nice, because everyone who does a MOOC is like, wow, it's great, because although there's that many people in there, it's actually a really nice community. So it's a chance to talk to other teachers who are having the same problems that you are, teachers who found workarounds or tips, or they've got advice to help you. You know, you might be a PE teacher teaching in English and you might be in there and there might be another one, they might be in a different country. So it's kind of, you can make connections and build community and learn from other teachers who are experts in their own fields, not just the people who are delivering the course content. So that's a really nice way to do that. We had a course, the course started on the 6th on Monday. So we're still in week 1. So there's plenty of time to do the week 1 content. And there are educators in there as well responding to queries and questions and comments and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing.
But teachers can find that from the Supporting Every Teacher page.
They can go to the Supporting Every Teacher page and they can go there, or they can go direct to the Future Learn platform where it sits and look for Teaching English Online. And the one that's running now is for China and beyond. It's for the whole world. Anybody can join. And it's a 4-week course. It's free if you don't want to get a certificate or extra access, but if you want to upgrade, then you've got access forever and you get a certificate as well from that. So it's a really nice place to go. It's nice because it's not just a webinar. It's not just a one kind of like moment. It's something you can dip in and out of. You can go back, you can get more ideas. You can see how the discussion has developed, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got various other things as well. Write and improve might be an interesting thing for people teaching in an online context.
So there's a question about that, Helen, which I'm going to jump to now. Anna Rita asks, how can I engage and motivate students who don't like to write in writing activities?
Okay, so if we look at the problem first and then we think about solutions after, that's probably the best way to go about it, isn't it? So writing activities, again, this goes back to what you do in the online classroom and what you do out of the online classroom. So I would say, as a teacher myself, I would say that if you're in the online classroom, the advantage of being in that classroom and doing writing activities is that you can talk to other people and you can look up models, you can evaluate things together, you can get different ideas, and that's what helps you to write better or to have better outcomes at the end of the day when you do your own writing. Because when we're teaching writing, we're teaching people how to do it, not just getting them to write it and then grading them. So using that opportunity to find topics that your students are interested in, that they want to write about, getting them to talk about those topics first and think about different ideas, to develop their ideas, looking at model texts, you know, that kind of thing, looking at model text together and looking about what's great and what could be improved. And then they can go away, they can write something. They can write it just on a piece of paper and take a photo. Yeah, they can write it in an online document. They can write it with a team. So you could open something like a collaborative document, a Google Doc, or if you're in Teams, Microsoft Teams, they have like shared documents there as well. And everybody writes one paragraph, or you start one paragraph with a sentence and then you have to go to the next paragraph and write the next sentence, or, you know, you've got different ways of structuring that kind of collaborative writing. Or you could use something like Write and Improve, where you set a task and the students complete it in there, and then they get immediate feedback on all the areas where they could improve, and so they can improve it a little bit more, and by the time you, the teacher, look at it, it's got all those errors gone, and then you can give some like sort of more, you know, overarching feedback regarding, you know, sort of the criteria that you want to assess them on. So there's lots of things you could do to make writing fun. You could get a cake and generate some kind of really nice lesson around writing about the cake, you know. I mean, there's loads of things you could do.
But it's good to think of it in terms of maybe technical solutions like Write and Improve, but then also the kinds of more imaginative, fun solutions that Olha was mentioning to keep a balance between those two things.
I think what the issue is, it's not about online. It's just like a lot of teachers find writing difficult. It's very difficult to inspire, to motivate their learners to write per se. So I think Helen's ideas are great. I mean, collaborative writing is fabulous. I mean, one of the things I used to have this sneaky trick with my university students, and I used to say, well, they say you're only allowed to write the length of a tweet, and we actually and they at first they thought this was a bit funny, but they got frustrated because they wanted to write more, and I said no, it's too long, it's got to be shorter, you've got too many characters, and they were very happy to write something short, but they gradually realized that they had more to write. So, you know, there's lots of different ways of doing it, and there's lots and lots of stuff online about ways of developing writing, encouraging writing, making writing fun.
The reverse psychology.
Yeah, I like a bit
Very
of that.
nice.
It's interesting because in an online classroom, you usually have a chat function, and that is transformative. I mean, it's fantastic. You can, do loads of things. You can give your instructions there so that they don't ask you 7 times for the instructions, all that kind of stuff, But, but when it comes to writing, it's really interesting because you can get them to write the beginning of a sentence and everyone writes it. So then you can see 30 beginnings of the sentence all at once and everyone can see it. And then you can ask them to do it again, or you can get them to end a sentence, or you can get them to write a text collaboratively, even in that chat. The chat's really good. It is really good. Or you could use tools like Padlet as well, or other online notice boards. So you get, I don't know, maybe you've got a graph or something like that, and you're all like, right, okay, let's think about this graph or this picture or whatever it is. Let's write one sentence about the graph. And everyone writes a sentence on the online notice board, and you can compare it there. And it becomes immediately obvious where people are making mistakes or where people have used better language. And then they're all kind of like immediately auto-correcting. They're correcting their own stuff. And it's really nice because then you can look at them and discuss and group them, all that kind of stuff. Because on Padlet, you can move them around as well. So there's lots of really, really nice writing stuff that you can do in an online environment that you can't do with a pen and paper in a classroom.
It's great to look for those opportunities, isn't it, Helen? To make the most of the online environment for the affordances that it has, rather than looking to replicate the affordances of a face-to-face classroom. We've had loads of questions about teaching speaking, so I want to spend the last 10 minutes or so just on teaching speaking. So Natalia asks, it would be nice to have some ideas for developing group speaking when there's no possibility of breakout rooms. Chris.
Oh, Natalia. Yes. No, this is a question or something I've heard a lot of recently. Yeah, trying to help develop group speaking skills, communicative speaking. But when everybody is sort of within the same room, challenging. If we try and tackle it in the same way that we would in a face-to-face classroom. I mean, I guess if we take a step back and think about what we're actually trying to do, what is it that we're focusing on, and if we look at this speaking as, sort of the range of strategies that are used, so that might involve taking turns effectively and sort of offering opinions and disagreeing or agreeing with other people politely. It's not just what you say as well, but also, the role that you play in the dance of conversation, as an active listener, showing whether you understand or if you don't, and trying to sort of negotiate that. Those are all things that are really, really important in becoming a more effective speaker. And I think depending on your approach, it's possible that you could actually help learners become better at those things without them actually speaking. Certainly in terms of the first steps, it could be helpful to raise their awareness of what those strategies are. And one way of doing that would be to maybe with a text-based approach, bringing in listenings into your classroom, whether bricks and mortar or virtual, setting tasks, providing tasks that will lead learners to notice those strategies, the things that people are doing, see what those strategies look like and what they sound like as well.
I guess those could be videos as well, couldn't they, Chris?
Absolutely. And I think videos, particularly if we're trying to sort of help with spoken communication that might be used by people in person, videos even more important, because there's a whole lot of non-verbal stuff that we do to get our message across. So yeah, I think providing some tasks that focus people on what those strategies are, what they look like, what they sound like, and also focusing people on the effects on other listeners or other speakers. I think those are really useful things we can do before anyone's actually even tried to do it themselves. I mean, that's the obvious next stage, really, isn't it? Once we've sort of understood what it is, we need to provide them with a bit of practice of doing that.
Helen, you had an idea earlier for doing that, which was to break up the class into smaller groups and deal with a smaller group at a time. So you might have, if you've got an hour-long lesson, then you deal with a third of your group for 20 minutes and then another third for another 20 minutes and so on.
Yeah, or you could just do 3 minutes with each pair of learners. I mean, if you're doing, you know, if you want to do a practice speaking assessment or something like that, then that's a nice way of doing it. So you split your hour up between the different learners as well. With
I guess
adults,
the question then would be, what do you give the other learners to do when you're not with them?
Did you have an idea there, Chris?
Well, I was just going to leap in with the obvious. They need a task. They need a task, Matt. So yeah, I mean, if you think maybe depending on the number of students you have in your class, but say you have 20 students, that's 10 pairs. If they have several minutes each, I'm good at English but awful at maths. That's a long time. If you go first, that's a long time that you will not be actively speaking. So it's so important to have a task, something to listen to, for a number of reasons. One, particularly for younger learners, to keep people engaged and involved. Otherwise you'll lose them if people are just expected to listen. It'd also be, I don't know, there's so much that people can gain from being focused on important elements of, you know, of other people's English, what they're producing, and then they'll be able to participate within peer feedback. I think if you can sort of establish clear criteria, clear things that people are trying to sort of incorporate within their speaking, within a certain task, then it makes it easier for other people to sort of judge how well they've done it. And that process of sort of evaluating and giving feedback, it makes it easier for you to sort of apply it to your own speaking and sort of to check yourself. And then maybe you'd be better able to sort of go off and do that independently. Everyone's got a voice recorder on their phone that they could sort of use outside of class. Sorry, Helen, you were...
No, I was going to, Olha, do you want to have a go first?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, this is, I mean, something I used to do many years ago before online teaching was when students, particularly adult students, were saying, well, we don't get enough practice of speaking in class. I would say, well, why don't you phone each other? You know, just pair up or whatever and just phone each other once a week and have a little chat and just do it in English. And which they found, you know, they found it a bit funny at the first, but then when they started doing it, they found it really quite challenging. And you kind of put on a hat, as imagine we were talking Italian or something, you try and get into the spirit. We're having this very British conversation. So they'd always start by saying, isn't it lovely weather? But you, again, you know, if they're not in the classroom, they can be doing things together that we are not actually overseeing all the time, or that everybody else doesn't have to be involved in. And so the idea of a breakout room, you can have a different kind of breakout. You can break out independently, and you know, 2 or 3 students could have a little Zoom meeting. I'm not sure, you know, we're a bit concerned about these platforms at the moment, but you know, check out your platforms. Just FaceTime each other, you know, and that's a nice thing to do if you're normally in class and you're normally socializing, because classes are very social places. If you're normally socializing a bit, you know, catch up with each other, but try and have that conversation as much as possible in English. And as soon as you're, you know, B1 above, you should be able to manage that reasonably well.
Certainly for adults, there's a lot more free in terms of what you can do. So if you're using a platform like Skype or like Google Hangouts or whatever, where it doesn't have that breakout feature, then you can ask them just to, because they're adults, they can contact each other if they're happy to share their details, you know, so they can contact each other, they could record a little conversation, they could create something together, and then they could share that back with the class. And like you're saying, Chris, if they have some kind of idea of why they're doing it and what they're trying to achieve, then, you know, you can do peer feedback. You could pop up those speaking videos on a notice board, and then everyone has a chance. If you have an online notice board, there's a comments feature, so you could pop up a video get some peer feedback. You go away and do another video, so you've got a better version. And then the teacher can spend less time giving feedback to all of those individual people, because giving feedback is quite intensive as well, you know, and you can't, like we're saying earlier, you've got to be kind to yourself, and good enough's good enough, and you've got to manage your time. So choose individuals where you're going to give feedback one week, and then the next week you give feedback to other students, you know, that kind of stuff.
Or you can do that in your little, if you do your little mentoring sessions, you can just then speak directly to that student and talk about stuff. So
exactly.
you can keep notes of what you want to say.
Fantastic. I think we're going to have to draw it to a close there. So I'm going to ask each of you to summarize your top tip in one sentence.
I'm going to summarize my top tip in my bunny ear. And my top tip would be, have some fun, you know, chillax, just enjoy yourselves, and it's okay to be a bit silly, because silliness is actually a very good medicine for stress. That would be my top tip.
Follow that, Helen.
Okay, so as a teacher, you need to feel confident and secure. So choose a platform that you are comfortable with. Read the terms and conditions, or use one that your school has recommended. Make sure your students are safe, and then you'll feel a lot better.
Chris.
Oh, I'd say in this time of isolation, don't feel that you have to do this on your own. Connect with other teachers. There's lots of communities. There's Helen's MOOC that we've sort of spoken about earlier. There are lots of ways to connect with many other teachers in the same position. That's not one sentence, Matt. I'm ever so sorry.
Can I have another one?
It's never going to happen.
Go on,
I've got a really good one,
greedy.
a really good one. So rehearse with other teachers. Just get like 5 teachers, all go into the platform and take it in turns being the teacher. And then you can see what it's like being the student as well, because that's really cool.
That's
and then it like makes
idea.
you know, it's really nice. It's nice.
Super.
Brilliant. Right, my top tip is to remember the Supporting Every Teacher campaign. Cambridge University Press has loads of resources that you can find at cambridge.org/supportingeveryteacher. And Cambridge Assessment has loads of resources as well. We'll share all these on the page afterwards. But cambridgeenglish.org is the place to go. Is that right, Helen?
Yes, you can go to, well, there's 2 websites, isn't there? There's the Cambridge University Press website and there's Cambridge Assessment English website, but they're both running the Supporting Every Teacher campaign. So we will have a page there on both of those.
Excellent. And if you enjoyed this session, we can do more, but you have to tell us to do more. Put your compliments and requests in the comments below, and then we'll make sure that we arrange a few more of these. Thanks very much to our panelists.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for organising it.
And thanks to everybody that's turned up and watched us. Stay tuned for more. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.